It is always the case that, with movies, genres come and go in popularity, with a sudden rise usually due to a fresh approach taken by a film or films, which leads to a boom in that type of story and a plethora of imitators riding on the coattails. Still, excitement for these new ideas inevitably fade, and after a while, the recurring characters within them that have become part of pop culture eventually lead to audience fatigue and drop-off. As the 1980s bled into the 90s, this was the case for horror. We had been blessed with a whole cast of new villains to fear, from Freddy Krueger to Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and countless others, though these franchises would eventually evolve into a seemingly never-ending cycle of trying to outdo the previous film by pushing things as far as they could possibly go.
Horror movies are a very specific genre, and they tend to go in cycles of what's being done at any given time.
By the mid-90s, the horror genre was truly dead.
In the 80s, there was the slasher, and the slasher picture really became the kind of horror movie. Starting with Halloween, and then you had your Friday the 13th, your Nightmare on Elm Street, and then House on Sorority Row and all those kinds of movies. Those movies had kind of played themselves out.
Horror, and slasher films in particular, were on the decline. They no longer packed the punch they did at their inception, and audiences were moving on. Yet, in 1994, locked away in a room for 3 days in Palm Springs, California, one man was writing a script that would turn horror on its head and bring those audiences flooding back. Kevin Williamson loved movies as a child, especially those of Steven Spielberg, and as he grew older and eventually graduated high school and college, his love of the silver screen led him to moving to New York to pursue an acting career. In 1990, he landed a role on the soap opera Another World, though he strived for more and would move a year later to Los Angeles in hopes of gaining larger roles. Unfortunately, he only managed to land some small roles in a TV series and 2 movies, and so branched out and took a screenwriting class at UCLA, which is when he wrote his first script. The script did actually sell to a production company, though languished in development hell and was eventually shelved. And it would not be until 4 years later that the movie he wrote, Killing Mrs. Tingle, which would later be renamed to Teaching Mrs. Tingle, would get to see the light of day. With his acting career failing to truly take off, and his script in limbo, Williamson found himself struggling financially, as he explained in the documentary Scream: The Inside Story.
I was so desperate when I wrote it. I couldn't pay my bills, and my car payment was due, and I was 3 months behind on my rent.
To make ends meet, Williamson took on a house-sitting job for some extra money, and it was while he was there that he would get the spark of inspiration that would ultimately turn his fortunes around, and that of the declining horror genre too. One night whilst at the house, he watched a documentary on the Gainesville Ripper. From the website Thoughts Catalogue, after watching the episode, Williamson had an experience where he returned to the house he was sitting and noticed an open window he didn't remember opening. The story goes, he called a friend to help him relax and feel safer, but the two got to chatting about how the Gainesville Ripper reminded Williamson of Michael Myers from Halloween. They also spoke about their favourite scary movies. This inspired Williamson to write an 18-page treatment about a young woman home alone, playing cat and mouse with a killer on the phone. Fueled by a love for horror films, and his new idea of a satirical take on the slasher genre, as well as his financial situation, he was riddled with the fear that someone was going to get there before him. And so, he locked himself away for 3 days in Palm Springs, California, and emerged with a completed script for his new movie, simply titled Scary Movie. As the script did the rounds in Hollywood, Williamson describes the interest around it.
By the end of the day, there was 4 or 5 people bidding on it. Everyone else had called and said, we like it, we're gonna buy it, but we hadn't heard from Miramax yet. The next morning, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning, we got a call from Miramax. It's saying, okay, Bob read it, he loved it, he wants to buy it, how much?
Miramax, for their Dimensions film label, purchased Williamson's script for $400,000. With the script being described as fresh and triumphant in its understanding and fun-poking of horror slashers, Williamson not only saved his own declining situation, but would soon find that his words would breathe new life into the genre too. With Wes Craven attached to direct, and the cast befitting a teen slasher film, Scary Movie would be renamed to Scream, and would be released in theatres in 1996. The film would be a great success, earning $173 million in tickets worldwide, and spawning a sequel the next year, which Williamson would write, as well as I Know What You Did Last Summer, another movie which he wrote, based on a book of the same name, and in the same sphere as the new Scream template of horror. 1998 also brought Williamson more success with The Faculty, and in 1999, when due to write the script for Scream 3, he instead set about directing the first script he had written whilst at UCLA. Teaching Mrs. Tingle finally saw its release. Williamson returned to Scream, which had now become a franchise of its own, to write the 4th instalment, released in 2011. 2 more instalments were made in the following years, with Williamson listed as executive producer, though Scream's latest instalment, set for release in 2026, will have Williamson directing. Though the Scream franchise has now perhaps gone the same way as those earlier 80s ones, just like some of those iconic characters, Ghostface and the original 1996 Scream movie paved the way for a new avenue that horror, and its fans, could explore. It spawned a mass of similar movies that jumped on the new hot thing, as all good groundbreaking films do. It brought audiences back with its clever mix of horror, satire and mystery, and remains to this day a seminal point in horror history. As for Kevin Williamson, he went on to great success in TV especially, creating hit shows such as Dawson's Creek and The Vampire Diaries, among others. And now that he has returned to movies and the director's chair, in 2026, we will get to see what the Scream franchise still has to offer.